Hey, everybody. I feel like I'm going to move this away. I'm like a heavy breather. I don't want to freak you guys out with like, how you guys doing? How you guys doing with the heat? All that. I literally was like, I want ice. I need a chair. Like, if I like faint, it's not part of the energy thing. Like, just like throw water on me, and I'll be right back. So the future of energy, right? Like, how many of you guys saw the movie Black Panther? You remember when Shuri, the younger sister, was like, okay, your suit is powered by kinetic energy, right? And like, each time you're taking those hits, each time you're taking those kicks and whatnot, it's powering up so you can just like blast. You guys remember that? So when I saw that, I was like, somebody owes me a check. Because that is very much my story. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that soon, explaining a little bit about how I got into energy, the perspective I bring to energy, and the work that we've been doing. But first, let's kind of just lay out where we are and say, why does energy matter? Before Black Panther, and like made it so awesome, at least for me, and all that exciting stuff, why is energy such an important thing for us to get right? Why are we thinking about the future of it? What's wrong with it right now? So we start, first, the socials. Everyone should know the socials, just in case. Marketing would want you to know that. So let's start with kind of the basics. What's the problem? One in 5 people still lack access to modern electricity. So think about what we're kind of accustomed to, even this working, that working. 1 in 5 people don't have that. When the sun goes down, that's the end of their day. Right now, we are choosing to not be in air conditioning. I don't know if I agree with that choice, but we're choosing that, right? We're choosing that. Imagine if you didn't have that choice. Imagine if this was just like, yeah, like I have to just live my life, do everything out in the sun, nothing else. Some people might say that's amazing, of course, and it is, but everything, you need the balance. Now, for the places that do have access to reliable electricity or energy, then you have the issue of where you're getting it from. Usually, it's non-renewable. In fact, energy accounts for approximately 60% of all greenhouse gas emissions today. Again, so we need a better tomorrow, right? It's the majority of the reason why our planet is failing. And let's even take it down to like the 1%er thing. I mean, energy is a problem on so many different levels. Like, let's think about how technology has just infused, like, in every part of our lives, and how technology requires power. Every new thing that you see, every new startup, whatever they're doing, if they don't have access to energy, they're not doing anything. Whether it's the fact that if you don't have a live battery in your phone, if your phone has like less than 10% charge, I mean, I don't know about you, but if my cell phone has less than 10% charge, I don't want to leave the house. I don't want to go out. I don't want to do anything. It's like a psychological issue, right? Literally 33% of people have gotten into an argument with a significant other or romantic interest as a result of unanswered calls or texts because their smartphone was dead. It's breaking up marriages, you guys. This is breaking up. This is a problem on so many different levels. I literally, personally, have gotten into fights with my significant other because his phone was dead. I didn't care. Should have had access to electricity. So the thing is, because this is such a global thing, because everyone understands that energy is so infused in the way we do things, energy is so much a part of everything we do in our lives, we all can be leaders in the future of what it will look like. Because ultimately, if you actually look up the definition of science in the dictionary, it's the study of life. Which means if you're living, you're halfway there. And many of us are living with an energy system that, while it may be the status quo, it's just not good enough. And so for me, I've experienced all of these things. I got into energy because I'm a dual citizen of Nigeria and the United States. Nigeria is a country in the global south. It's a country like many other developing countries that don't have doesn't have reliable access to the infrastructure that you would expect when you're thinking about a full, solid electrical system, right? That can get you what you need when you need it so you can actually scale and live your lives. For me, I never thought I'd be at the head of an energy technology company. I actually specifically got pushed into it because going to Nigeria, visiting my family, we would lose power several times a day. And it didn't matter whether we were in the village or we were in like the bustling city of Lagos, we would just lose power and that would be the end of it. One day, I was there for my aunt's wedding. Pretty much, if you're a Nigerian, you go to Nigeria a lot if people are getting married or dying. We do funerals and weddings really well. It's weird, but that's what we do. So it was my aunt's wedding. We lost power as expected, and they brought out a diesel generator. So in these communities, what people will do when they don't have access to reliable electricity infrastructure is they'll bring out either a kerosene lamp or a diesel generator. These are horrible for the environment and horrible for the people living in these spaces. In fact, living with a kerosene lamp is like smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. And so, of course, when they brought in this diesel generator, what happened is that I started to kind of complain. The fumes were horrible. And my cousins, who were in their 20s at the time, said something that I will never forget. They said, "Don't worry, you'll get used to it." Now, one, this bothered me because I'm a 17-year-old person, and I'm sitting here saying, you're telling me to get used to dying, which doesn't make sense. But I think what bothered me even more was that it was very clear that they, young men in their 20s who should be seeing the entire world as their oyster, that they had gotten used to dying. And so I wanted to create something, not that would change the future of energy at the time. For me, it was about creating something that would ideally bridge the gap between what's working and what's not working. Create something that would make them feel like they actually did have a chance to be part of the future of energy, the future of the world that they were going to be living in. And so I looked and saw that the one thing that they did really have a lot of passion and hope and belief that things could be better, that things were just magically awesome, was when they were playing soccer, or what they would call football. My cousins are really not that good at soccer. They're really not. Yet for some odd reason, when they're playing soccer, they'll make bets like, oh, you know that goal that Pele made that we saw in the video, or you know that goal that Beckham made, or you know that goal that whoever made at the time. I know I can make it. And they would place bets, and you would see all this excitement, and of course they wouldn't make it, but at least they tried. And it was so interesting to see, okay, that passion and that hope. How can you combine that? How can you take that and apply it off the pitch? And so the first thing I actually created was an energy-generating soccer ball, something that actually harnessed the kinetic energy, like the Black Panther suit, of play, and stored that power inside of the ball so it can be used as an off-grid power source. Again, not thinking that I'd be building a massive company, just creating something that would show people that they could be part of the solution. By simply amplifying existing behavior, you can get the power that you need. 2 years later, ended up creating a jump rope called the Pulse. I don't bring the soccer ball because I'm not very good at soccer, but I'm better at jumping rope. And it can do, again, the exact same thing. By simply putting our more dynamo system inside of each jump rope handle, as you jump, you're harnessing, again, that kinetic energy, storing it inside of each handle so it can be used as an off-grid power source to power lights, or like what I have right here, a fan, because I need it. So you guys want to see how this works? Yeah? I normally do this in heels, but I felt like that wasn't the vibe of this event. And so it works, honestly, just like a jump rope. The key idea is to not actually take away from the existing experience. You still need a good jump rope, right? But then, see, I'm breathing heavy. But then when you're ready, you can get the light. It's as simple as that. Now, this product, we now distribute this in the socket, all around the world via nonprofits in a hyper-sustainable way, working with different STEM organizations and whatnot. I'm going to go ahead and connect this fan. But the key thing is that it's just a play product. This is the potential, but we're talking about the future of energy. And the goal of this talk is not just to say, look, this is what's fun, this is kinetic energy. It's to show you that the magic that you saw in Black Panther. The idea that this technology can be in everything that moves, that that's not only possible, that that's not only the future, but we're closer than you think. And so the question first is, why is it that people aren't already thinking this way? Why is it that people aren't thinking about, oh, yes, oh, wonderful. That's how it should always be. So the question is, why aren't people already thinking this way? Right now, the way people think about energy, it's not wrong. They think it should be cheap and it should be clean, right? It's like, oh, it just needs to be accessible, everyone needs to have it, so it needs to be cheap, and it should be clean, right? Like most people say it should be clean. The Sustainable Development Goals are literally structured around it being cheap and clean. Now, this isn't wrong, but it's not necessarily right. Because the reality is, cheap and clean are more like features of what it should be. It's more like, yes, like ultimately, because it's X, it's cheap and it's clean. But if you design with those kind of parameters in mind, those very siloed parameters in mind, when you're thinking about the future of energy, you're going to get something that's kind of a force fit. Because energy is entirely too dynamic to just be cheap and clean. What we think at Uncharted Power, and what I personally think, given that it's my company, is that energy should be convenient. So what do I mean about that? Convenience is this amazing thing that encompasses cheap and clean, but it further emphasizes the importance of ease, accessibility, and integrability. What we're thinking about is from a more dynamic perspective, how do we make energy convenient? Because the future of everything is ultimately convenience. Think about it. When someone asks, like, what was the first car? Often people will say, oh, it was the Model T. No, the Ford Model T was not the first car. It was simply the first car designed for convenience. Designed so it could be produced in a mass way, supply chain, easily repairable, affordable. Again, these are all things that are essentially features of convenience, right? Convenience is on demand, when you need it. Convenience is decentralized, not bureaucratic. Convenience is democratized, accessible, affordable. And that's what we need to think about when we're creating solutions in energy. Even take smartphones, for example. No one would have thought when you created the iPhone that it was going to catalyze and create a whole economy for on-demand services. I can't believe that the guy who created the iPhone said, look, here you go, I know Uber's coming in 10 years or 15 years or 20 years. But what happened when you had something just in your pocket with you wherever you wanted to go is that you had convenience. You had compute power, you had connectivity conveniently available. And of course, it built from there. And the reason why it makes sense to separate convenience, for example, just from affordability. Let's take the example of Uber again. In a lot of places, Uber is not the cheapest way to get around. Specifically in New York, where I'm from, Uber is not cheaper than a normal taxi, but it is significantly more convenient. And so people will pay a little bit more for that convenience, and as such, now it's disrupted the entire space. And in New York, the actual city government had to create a similar Uber-like app. Even when you think about the rise and fall or whatnot of Bitcoin, but really underlying idea behind it, blockchain. Why is that so exciting? Why is that changing the way people are thinking about things? Because it's convenient. It's decentralized. It's something that can give anyone a chance to be a part of it. And so that is what we believe needs to be the goal. When you're thinking about the future of energy, designing for the future of energy, we're talking about designing convenient energy solutions. And so why aren't we there? One, are we allowed to, energy, I don't care, energy's fucking complicated. I'm just gonna say, energy is, I have been doing this, I invented the socket ball when I was 19 years old. I am 30 years old right now. I've been doing this thing for 11, 12 years, and I could do it for another 50 years and still tell you, there's always some more going into it. It is a constantly moving space. And I think that people need to understand it more to be able to actually affect change in it, but they also have to kind of constantly stay abreast of what's happening. If you think about energy as kind of like a triangle, you have energy technology, you have energy policy, you have energy financing. Right? All of these different things play into the energy ecosystem. The actual products, the policy, so like the rules that the government's placing on where you can install something, where you can sell something, how you can do something. For example, in the United States, even if you have solar on your roof, you are not allowed to island off. Like if there's a natural disaster or something, they actually tell you to turn off your solar panels because you need to sit there and not have energy too, just like the grid-connected people, because the utilities don't want people to get any crazy ideas about kind of having any autonomy around energy. So they go ahead and they have their lobbyists, and that's the rule. And then, of course, you have the financing. You can have great technology. You can have a great government space, or if anything, just like where they're leaving you alone. But if you can't raise the money, right, and that it's always changing depending on where you are in the developing world, the developed world, US, Canada, who knows, then it's not going to get anywhere. And so given that it's so complicated, a lot of times people are like, you know what, I just can't with this. And if you just can't with something, you're not even going to try it. If you don't try it, you're not going to find ways that you can make it more convenient. Even within energy technology, there's a layer of complication. So my company specifically focuses on energy technology. And we found that it's not just generation. What I just showed you was technology for generation. That's where we started. But you can't just design for generation without thinking about the overall ecosystem, without thinking about storage, without thinking about transmission, where you keep that energy and how you get it to people where they need it and when they need it. And so ultimately, it's a triangular problem, a triangular ecosystem, triangular problem. And a lot of times, companies can really only do one thing at a time. So they might just try to build something in generation, or just might try to build something new in storage or transmission. Of course, the problem is that triangular problems require a triangular approach, a more complicated approach. The second obstacle that we have found when you're thinking about getting to the future of energy, a future of convenient energy, is that centralized energy, not to be kind of on the nose, is incredibly inconvenient. So centralized energy is something that's massive in the US, massive in kind of the developed world, and it works for a lot of reasons, but it's an infrastructural way of thinking that doesn't work for everyone. It's the reason why there's still over 1 billion people who don't have access to electricity. It's because they don't have access to this kind of infrastructure. Why? Well, one, you have high upfront costs. Like, it can take several $100 million before you can even say, now I want to open up a massive power plant. Maybe that money might be easy to raise in some places, but if you're going to Nigeria, or if you're going to, I don't know, anywhere, honestly, in the global south that does not have that same kind of investment community, investors aren't going to want to put their money there. They're going to say, I only invest in where I know and what I understand. Let's say you are able to even go ahead and raise that money. It can take 7 to 10 years to build up that power plant and to build out those transmission lines, those long, massive transmission lines. So again, if you're an investor, you're sitting here saying, okay, 7 to 10 years from now, there could be a coup. There could be anything. I'm not putting my money in this. And if you're the person who needs the energy, you're like, 7 to 10 years? But like, what do you want me to do between now and then? And so it doesn't fit. Even if you're just thinking, okay, no, I have the money, I have the time, it's fine, I'm kicking it, I don't know, going to a monastery for the next 7 to 10 years. If you care about the planet, you're going to have an issue with centralized energy because it's not suited for renewable generation. The way the centralized energy ecosystem works, you'll have a massive power plant. And then you have transmission lines that connect it hundreds of miles away to get power to people hundreds of miles away. This is a really exciting, amazing infrastructural thing. But the problem is because you're generating energy in one place and you need to get it so far away, you can't easily turn it off and on. And you definitely need to make sure that it's always available over there on demand, which means it always just has to be on. The power always has to be flowing, whether you want it or not, because they won't have time to adjust when you actually tell them your demand. It has to keep going. Now, that might work for coal or whatever type of non-renewable power plant, but for example, renewables, it's intermittent. Sometimes there's sun, sometimes there isn't. Sometimes there's wind, sometimes there isn't. Sometimes there's waves, sometimes there isn't. Sometimes there's kinetic motion, whatnot. Sometimes there isn't. And so you need a solution that's a little bit smarter than that. You need a solution that can be a little bit more dynamic than that. And that's not centralized energy. And so what's our solution? What do we believe is possible? What are we building to bring us towards the future of energy? We call it the More Platform. The More Platform is our triangular solution for tackling the issue of convenient energy through innovative methods of energy generation, storage, and transmission. It's a platform of technology that allows us to rethink the energy technology ecosystem from centralized to distributed, keeping in mind the cost of infrastructure development and the deployability and the need for something to be more modular so it can be truly convenient, truly on demand, decentralized, and democratized. There are a few cool things going on with this platform, and I understand I may lose a few of you on this one, but I have to, for those of you who kind of want to dive into this, it's worthwhile saying. The platform has been something that we've been developing now for 7.5 years, but in particular in the last 3.5 years. We had 10 patents and patents pending covering the technology of this platform. And it can do some really cool things. You have the technology of micro-embedded generation. So this is, right now, like what you've seen here in the jump rope, or in what I mentioned, the soccer ball. But imagine if everything on the ground was a generator. Everywhere you walked, you generated energy. Everywhere you're driving, you're generating energy. All motion, anything that moves could be a source of energy. If you come to our lab in New York, you'll see energy-generating longboards that can charge your cell phone. You'll see energy-generating swing sets that power Wi-Fi. You'll see energy-generating speed bumps that can power traffic lights. And you'll see panels for energy-generating roads and sidewalks. The second big thing when we're thinking about storage, then, of course, is how do you think about all these different micro packets of energy coming together? So we developed IP on storage, particularly called scalable amalgamation, where we actually figured out how to take different micro packets of energy that would be generating at different frequencies and different voltages, and how to amalgamate or combine all of that efficiently. Believe it or not, that had never been true. The status quo for solar panels is to force it so that the voltage is always the same. So you're missing out on the high and the low. We created IP to address that so that you can have a world where if you're generating energy in micropackets versus in one centralized place, you can store it efficiently. But then the question was, how do you get it to where it needs to be? You don't have as much as you would if it was just some centralized non-renewable system. So how do you make sure it gets where it needs to be, when it needs to be there? So again, and believe it or not, the funny part of the story is we didn't do this purposely. I'm just persistent as a motherfucker, and I really was like, you know, I want to create a world where the socket is not just an inspirational thing, but a real thing, and then we ended up just solving the problems for renewable energy. I found out later, I was like, okay, we'll go with it. We created IP for wireless mesh energy networks, and that's what you see on the screen right there. This system allows us to transfer energy and data in real time at the same time. What that means is we can speak to the sources and loads, the things that need power, and only send it when it's needed. And that there can be an overall protocol to dictate when something should go somewhere, so it's a smart system. Believe it or not, this does not exist right now in energy. Right now, the energy system is so dumb, I cannot believe it. Right now, it's like a water faucet that's just on. Doesn't get turned off, doesn't even get, because it's so expensive to turn it, and it's just going, it's just flowing. And the best you can do is have a tube that kind of says, yeah, I need water, and it just is coming at you. But if you're not taking it, it's just being wasted. What we developed was a call and response system that can be actually deployed now on hardware, so that if you don't need the energy, it's not being sent to you. When you need it, it's being sent to you. It can be done over wireless or wired. This is massive because it now means you can reach the same number of people with less energy that can be renewable. And so that now addresses transmission. But this is all kind of lofty. Let me give you guys an example specifically of how we're deploying it. So the more platform, we can do this with consumer products, right? Like if you imagine if your door hinge and your floor panels and your couch and everything had our micro generators inside of it, and it was storing that power dispersed in a decentralized manner within those systems. And when you walked into the room, there was an overall mesh protocol that knew to wirelessly transmit that power to your cell phone. That's the consumer side. But the infrastructure side is actually the one that's the most exciting to me, because ultimately, the issues with energy from an environmental perspective are infrastructural. And so what we created was one of the fanciest boxes you'll ever see, to be honest. It's called the More Infrastructure System. The More Infrastructure System, or MIS for short, is a smart distributed energy resource solution. It's literally a panel that we designed with support of the labs that build the largest bridges and roads around the world, that you put into the ground, almost flush with the ground. It's very easy. You don't have to go deep and trench. And each panel can generate, store, and distribute energy. And it can be combined modularly, almost like Legos, to create low-cost, super efficient microgrid networks. They generate from kinetic energy, but they can connect solar, they can connect any type of energy source to create these decentralized distributed energy networks. So why is this the future of convenient energy? Well, one, let's think about the status quo. So the first problem of energy being complex, the best thing that you can do to address that is come to talks like this. Google more, read more, and just try not to be so afraid of the fancy words, because again, in the end, I'll be honest with you guys, like I study psychology and economics, but I've been doing this for 10, 11 years now. If you can give yourself a gel manicure, you can solder a PCB. That's all I'm going to say. And so that's the best I can tell you in terms of getting into energy for obstacle one. Why does MIS address obstacle two? Well, one, high upfront costs. We're using a material called FRP. It's fiber-reinforced polymer or fiber-reinforced plastic. Super strong, but lightweight, so that you don't have to go as deep within the ground when you're embedding it. That's really the cost of underground transmission lines or any type of underground system. It's going into the ground and digging and all that trenching. So we cut that down. In fact, currently the MIS reduces installation costs by 70%. In terms of long development timelines, it's as modular as puzzle pieces, designed so that they interlock, but also tamper resistant, so you can't just lift them up without lifting up the whole system. And so in that, we're able to reduce the installation time by up to 80%. And even repair, because each panel is smart. Each panel actually has a microprocessor that is connected to the voltage lines. If there's an issue with the generation system or an issue with the transmission system, we'll know immediately. And instead of digging up miles of land, we would pinpoint it to the meter, open it up, and get it out of there. And when you think about, again, it being suited for renewable generation, because of our smart energy mesh network patent, that software that we've deployed on this hardware, we're increasing, actually, the efficiency of renewable microgrids by up to 25% in our simulations right now. And so the future of energy, in our mind, is turning the ground and everything we walk on, everything we drive on, into a renewable power plant. And doing it in a manner that's so modular and so decentralized that when you're going to build a new sidewalk, or when you're going to just kind of lay down the ground or the pavement or the panels on your resort or in your backyard, you're building a power plant. You're getting it out there. And what's crazy is that it all started with play products like this. And so where do we see this going? I'll close with kind of the future of, right? Energy is a catalyst. I think that's what's the most exciting thing about what I do. I know that once we, sorry, it's hot, I gotta handle this. Once we get this into the ground, as we're now putting this into the ground, we know that it now leads to the future of so many other things. A few things that we're particularly excited about is data. Data is the new oil, and in my opinion, the future of convenient energy is data. Because each panel is smart, we're able to actually turn the network of panels into essentially a supercomputer or the infrastructure for cloud computing. So now when you're going into communities that did not have energy and you're laying down these panels at 30 to 20% of the cost of what it would have cost to get it out there faster, and you're actually enabling all communities that be connected to real energy. At the same time, they're getting the infrastructure for cloud computing, for mesh networking. I mean, we're talking about a situation where in Africa there are no tier 3 data centers because they can't meet the power requirements, and we can literally deploy it in real time just like that. Even when you think about laying fiber optic and telecom, because we were able to figure out how to deploy energy in a modular way when you're thinking about infrastructure, and these systems are smart and they speak to each other, we're actually also laying fiber optic in each of these panels as well. And so where I want to close is that, I think everyone comes to these kinds of talks with a different background, a different understanding of what's happening in energy, how they even get the energy that they have, and of course, I think what the future of energy is. If you leave with anything, I want you to leave with this. Not only is the future of energy convenient, and when we say convenient, we mean the same things that they mean when every startup says democratized, on-demand, decentralized. It's not just sexy for all the other startups. Energy also needs that same innovative, disruptive mindset. And more importantly, you don't need to be a storied, PhD to do those things, to bring energy to the forefront in that way. Everyone in this room can be part of the future of energy. And if we can get this right, we are catalyzing, we are creating an entirely new world that I am 100% certain we're all going to prefer living in. I think that's it for me. I can take questions, though. Any questions? Oh, thank you.